So first of all, any reflections on the day so far? Enough hope, enough solutions, or do we need to dwell further on problems, or how do we go forward, Lena?
I think it was a little bit depressing for me to hear the last two papers, because I think that most of the worries were answered. At least I tried to address those worries. And for Case, I would have to say, I think it was so, I really felt sad that the only product mentioned was fuel. And I mean, the whole agenda right now is that you don't misuse and sub-optimize the use of biomass, only taking the energy out. So that's, with Katarina, I think I love that part, but why don't you include the obvious, I mean, the grass, not just miscanthus, but normal grass in the temperate part of Europe, and then we can really achieve so much better. And then just imagine that you have just the perennial grassland, and then you have the food. No, the whole point of bioeconomy is that in 1 hectare, you can produce as much food as if you had a cereal, and get something of other industrial crops, and substitute for some chemicals, and getting some industrial and fuel. So we can eat the cake and have it too.
Eat the cake and have it too sounds wonderful. Let's see what Anna-Maria would like to respond. You don't need this. You have head.
Yeah, we have it.
I think we have. Yeah,
yes.
I just want to say I think that farms will be much more multifunctional going forward. At least that's my hope. That there will be much more multifunctionality, and they will produce more different. They will differentiate. They can still be specialized. I mean, they will have to be specialists, but that their output will be used in much more applications. That's at least my hope, and I hope that can also attract people to farming, because what we see today is also the socioeconomic dimensions is quite worrying. I think that people don't embrace farming as a career option, at least not in Sweden. I hear it all over the world, that people are sort of worried about the aging farming community. So hopefully there can be some kind of enthusiasm in this as well, because I think that's what we need to see. We need a lot more enthusiasm and less gloom and doom. And I think that's something that we should all embrace and help each other with creating this attractive future with innovation.
Exactly. And I think there comes the cascade use of biomass. So
Exactly.
how can we come up with these value-added products, not only biofuel, obviously. So if there is such products out there, if we can create markets for those products, then all of a sudden farming becomes interesting, so that people know that they'll get paid for what they produce.
It's an upward or downward spiral, I guess, as always. I don't think Kes and Katarina are still in the audience, are you? There you go.
Yeah.
Would you like to respond to the comment? Please. Here you go.
I just say I also agree that we need to make the agricultural landscapes more multifunctional, and but I think we need a more life cycle analysis and systematic perspective when we look at our activities for farming and producing biomass. It's easy to be optimistic on what they can give. The products are probably really good, but we need to look on the side effects of what we are trying to change. I think that's my key message.
Reflections on Katarina's response? Go ahead.
Yes, of course. I mean, we cannot call it sustainable if we don't include all 3 bottom lines. I fully agree. I'm all with you. And I think this case you said that you have to make all this, get a little one and then compromise and so on. I think we have to be very, very sure that it should be, social jobs is always important, activities in countrysides and rural and so on, but also environmental benefit and also economy. We need all 3. And I think it's possible. So I definitely think that we can go ahead in the bioeconomy if we are, even when we make this very hard, challenging. And please, please remember, we are not just talking crop residues. We are talking agro-industrial side streams. We are talking using the organic part of our waste. So don't conclude on bioeconomy just by mentioning crop residues. Bioeconomy is 2, 3, 4 times as big as crop residues.
Thank you, Lena. Katarina, you presented the Swedish politicians' view of working with bioeconomy, and I'd like to address the panel. What do we need from Katarina? Not from you specific, Camilla, sorry.
Yeah.
Katarina, and then Camilla.
Camilla from Malmö.
Yes, Camilla. Excuse me. What do we need from Camilla, and what do we need from the Swedish government in order to sort of be even stronger in this field? Dennis.
We clearly need this cross-sectoral collaboration. So we need to, even now, I mean, there are different perspectives when it comes to bioeconomy. Yes, there are great opportunities, benefits, but at the same time, we say that there might be potential negative outcomes of that. So we need to come together and talk and really clarify all these things. Why is it good and why it may be bad? So maybe this is the starting point, and this is the whole starting point for this conference as well, to let people speak from their own perspectives and then initiate this progress of communication.
Yes.
So I don't know how the government can contribute into that, what kind of settings we need to boost this kind of communication, because we need to understand how bioeconomy in the future should work properly if we want to talk about this transition to such a bioeconomy.
Camilla, do you have enough tentacles going into the academic world in terms of research of bioeconomy?
No, not me personally.
No.
I'm here because
You're representing, of course, the political body that we elected.
Yeah, but actually, I have a colleague who has those tentacles, so I'm here instead of him, Stefan Kjellman. But I'm very happy to be here because now I can talk to the researchers about high and low, what's going on in your world. And I totally agree with Dennis that this is fundamental, that we have open doors for each other, because I don't think we can talk about what can we do for you or what can you do for us, but we have to speak to each other all the time.
Anna-Maria.
I think that one of the things that we have an opportunity is when we now, Sweden wanting to be one of the front runners when it comes to implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals, we're all a bit trying to find the language, trying to find ways to address it, because especially from industry, I can just say that very few of the goals are immediately applicable. I think there's one on food waste, which is like a number. We can deliver on that. But so I think that we have an opportunity in this sort of a bit of a hesitant period to actually try to find a common language, because it is cross-sectorial. We're never good with cross-sectorial things because we like to box things in, because that's how we deal with the world. So I think that's something that I would sort of give sort of as a suggestion to you is really to embrace that from the governmental side, to actually take the lead in inviting different sectors, from industry, from universities, to develop this language, because if we do speak it together, we can understand each other and hopefully move forward.
Thank you. Pekka.
Okay, if I may take a little bit wider viewpoint outside Swedish political life, the European political life and European decision making. Last week I was participating in a seminar in Berlin. EFI was coordinating a project where the idea is that they will produce a report that tries to support the Commission to update the EU bioeconomy strategy. It's not sure that whether that will actually happen or not, but we will see what will happen. But that is one thing that you should have because the last strategy was constructed 2012, but quite a lot has happened after that. That probably is a little bit out of date. One issue that if we consider Swedish or Scandinavian conditions to some other countries in Europe, like Southern Europe, I think that it's fair to say that one size does not fit for all. That you have to take the regional conditions into account. You have to take what kind of, let's say, forest biomass you have, what is the tradition of the use, what kind of industrial activities you have then, and start developing from that. And if you have let's say, have a one simple formula, it might work on average, but in some cases it might be totally inefficient or not useful at all. So that is perhaps the regional differences. And one about the, of course, politicians should make decisions that guarantee that sustainable bioeconomy will develop. But I have to admit that it's not an easy task, because even the researchers don't agree that what actually sustainable bioeconomy is. In the field of forestry, for example, quite a heavy debate on how the climate change mitigation impacts should be calculated, and very, very fundamental issues. So I wish you good luck.
Yes.
Oh, thank you. Well,
Can I add?
absolutely, Lena.
I
Go ahead.
think the most, coming not from Sweden, but from here and looking from outside, I think the most outstanding you have done here is to be very good in public procurement. So that you actually make sure like public cars are driving on biogas, that you are using the municipality waste for central heating and so on. So I think that's very, very good. But the rest, what we need, I think we need more ambitious goals for sustainability. Transfer from fossil-based to bio-based. So set goals. Not choose technologies because market forces will choose the best, but set goals and then try to make incentive structures so that it will be appealing. For instance, also directives that you need to use the potential of a waste so and so much before you can allow to let it go as waste. Otherwise, you will get fined and so on. Then you make incentives of good behavior, of actually use your resources better. So I think we can do a lot.
So you talk about bonus and malus system, both systems. Camilla.
Yes, we had that discussion within the Innovation Partnership Program, Circular and Biobased. The first time we had a meeting of 4 hours, and I think maybe 2 of them was spent to discuss the goal for the bioeconomy. And I'm still, this was in October last year, and after the meeting I asked everybody, what do you mean by a goal? Do you want to quantify the goal? Do you want 100% bioeconomy? No, not 100%, everybody says, and me too, of course, because we still have some mining and other things. But what do you mean when you say set a goal? How do you think, how could a goal be developed?
The goal, for instance, municipality waste. Right now in Denmark, it's being burned, and we are very proud of that we use the energy.
Yeah.
But I think the goal should be, next step, let's say 70%, 80%, 100% after some years should at least go for making biogas, so nutrient recycled back. That's second. Then next 5 years, make sure you use all the precious part of the organic part of the municipality waste before it goes to biogas. Can you see? It's goals which are supporting. You make industries, you make markets, and so on. And Kees mentioned that, and very important part, to make it attractive for investors to feel that they can invest without having too much high risk. So government and other all supporting that we set goals so people take it serious. We will go this way. That makes good investment climate.
You had a goal 2020, for instance. Dennis.
I think what Arla did is a great example.
Yes.
Of that. The collaboration between the Scania trucks and the Landsman and the biofuel. So those two actually provide you the service. So you're not a logistic company, Arla. You produce your dairy products. So why should you deal with all the buying the trucks and all the logistics? So you get the service from those two companies, and then all of a sudden there's a market for that companies as well. So there's an intensive to produce the biofuel. So this kind of new business models that we're lacking. So if we have this running up and properly, then I think the transition will be much more smoother.
And I think, can I just comment? I think that this is actually happening on a large scale. If you actually look, if you go into websites for big corporations around the world, a lot of them are put in goals. And I think we should do that countries that do as well now. So I think that there is this kind of tendency, but we need to be bold. And I think the comment also about embracing not just the academia and government and companies, but also the NGOs, because what companies hate is to think that we're doing the right thing and then get squashed in the media for some aspect that the NGO thought we forgot to look into. So I think, again, the predictability that it's actually a good story. And then we need the methodology. They need to be agreeing on the methodology. I totally agree. Methodology is really key because we're really a science-based society, to a large extent at least. We like the sound science as a basis because then people feel safe.
And also with goals, you can communicate with the consumers in a trustworthy way, because you can actually show that you are advancing and there is a sense of urgency. We are all consumers on different levels, obviously. And as a consumer, you could be confused on a higher level sometimes on the conflict of interest in the materials. For instance, I'm wearing a tree right now. This is a cellulose, sustainably farmed tree turned into a jacket. This could also be a recreational place still, if it wasn't cut down. It could be fuel. It could be put into a wooden structure building an office, for instance. How do we make these choices easier for the consumer to sort of understand the implications of our choices when it comes to bioeconomy? Because it's not easy. I work with sustainability and it's still difficult for me. Forest man, Pekka.
Before I will reply, if I may really very briefly comment on the targets. The one good example from Finland is so-called carbon neutral municipality network. The municipalities have signed an agreement that they will cut down their greenhouse gas emissions by 80% from the reference year of 2007 till 2030. And the municipality councils have signed an agreement. Check the web page, is quite a good example of what can happen, and municipalities see it as not an obstacle but a positive way to.
We have that here in the region too.
But also actually the main motivation is that they save money based on, let's say, energy consumption, for example. But if I may comment on the consumer side, I think that the issue is, of course, that the consumers, when they go to shop and make decisions, they should have an easy to access information when they buy this or this product. What is the environmental footprint of, for example? I know that there are some pilot test studies on the environmental footprinting of different product categories. Of course, this is too difficult for the consumers. As such, it's impossible to make the decision. But reliable as possible information for clear, understandable way.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's difficult to ask the consumer to make that choice.
It is.
So, but I don't think it's right either, because actually you can make all the products you mentioned from the same biomass. And that means if I buy this one or this one or this one, it's still right if the overall exploitation of your biomass is sustainable. So I think it's actually very courageous and visionary goal setting in the government, and then match it with labeling that this is part of the cascading use in an optimal seen from all three bottom lines acceptable. Then that would be the guidance, and then you can buy your I love your jacket.
You.
I mean, it's so beautiful. And or you could say I like the food product, or I like the construction. Because we should do all. And this is what the kind of talking we have in the Nordic Bioeconomy panel, that we should, instead of waiting for all of Europe, maybe we should go together in the Nordic countries to do this. And then the review, I'm part of the small expert group reviewing the European bioeconomy strategy right now. And that's the kind of thinking we are doing. I mean, what is the next agenda? How do we do this best at this point in time? And extremely interesting.
Camilla, should we go ahead as the Nordic countries?
Yes, of course, we are going ahead. We have a very close cooperation in the bioeconomy area, so we continue with that. Of course, we have such a lot of similarities when it comes to bioresources and so on.
Not similar.
Dennis.
When it comes to consumption, yes, I mean how well we should let the consumers know about all the life cycle analysis of the different products. But I think we're not yet there, because we need to understand, even the researchers, a little bit better. How shall we use this biomass, for what purpose? I mean, which one is most environmentally, economically, socially beneficial to the society, to the economy? I don't say that we should do this first and then go forward, because then, as you said, we're maybe missing the train, because we need to act quite fast as well. But at the same time, this doesn't mean that we shouldn't do such studies and then just jump into the picture, because yes, I mean, we can replace the cement, some of the cement used in like construction.
Even
industry.
Skanska is talking about
So
moving
there's
away
great
from
potential
cement.
that we can cope with the reduction in greenhouse gas emissions. In terms of health benefits, there are lots of things to look at there. So there are a lot of potential there, yes. And then same thing with the textile as well. We can replace all the oil-based synthetic material in the textile. We can reduce the cotton. I mean, cotton, it's like the worst thing that you can think about. But at the same time, there are different other ways of using this as well. So we need a good understanding of what is the best option for what region, because as we said, bioeconomy is not like one big bioeconomy, global bioeconomy. Bioeconomy in Skåne, it's not exactly the same thing as bioeconomy in northern part of Sweden. So we need to come together and really work on a case and an area together with all the resources around. We need to have this regional smart specialization strategy to go through what resources we have, what industry we have around that, what institutions are there. So we need to bring all these actors and talk and discuss and learn, and then make specific strategies, maybe action plans for that specific case.
Thank you, Dennis. Now that you have all these 5 experts in front of you gathered together, would you like to pose a question? Here we go.
Hi, my name is Bastian Berlin. I'm a physical geography student here. And I have sometimes a little bit the feeling that in the bioeconomy, we try to find ways keep on consuming the way we consume right now. Like in the forestry example, it felt like if we intensify our forestry, we can use this additional wood instead of using concrete. But we already use here in Sweden, how much is it? 95% of our forest for economical reasons, and just a very small share is national parks and nature reserves. Shouldn't we instead find new ways of lower our consumption and extensify a lot of these areas, and then have that as areas for biodiversity? Because it feels like it was mentioned in some of the presentations, but in some others, it was just a small part. It's like, and biodiversity is problematic, but this is kind of the most important aspect for me.
Thank you. Very valid question. Oi, that was... I'm tall, but not that tall. Here we go. Okay, who would like to take that? Anna-Maria, you start. You were first.
I can just say that I think that with the global population increase, we have no choice but to change our consumption patterns. I think that we're over-consuming everything, but of course, I think we still need to encourage industry to move, to make it as efficient as possible. Because if we get sort of all focus too much on the consumption side, the business as usual is the best option for industry. Then to just say, well, people will demand less. So I mean, I just think that the business model is still there. That we want to be able to sell things, but of course there will be changes. I'm convinced about.
But maybe not sell. Maybe rent or
Of
borrow.
Of course, there
and
will
have
be different
models that are
sectors.
circular instead of
Sure. And about biodiversity, I think that at least from our perspective, we're definitely concerned about that planetary boundary as well. And we just acknowledge that we've been far too focused on the things I mentioned in the strategy, with climate being number 1. We definitely will have to look into how we can measure and manage biodiversity and other, ecosystem services in general better going forward, because I think that's something that we will have to really take serious as a serious threat. And I think we need ways also to handle that in a good way, methodologies, how to quantify it. We can't be calculating species on a detailed level, etc. So again, we need science to help us, and NGOs and government.
Thank you, Diana.
This with the biodiversity, I think this is so important, and I think also people, the public, the general, really sympathize that this is scary how much extinct we could do, and so many species we are losing. The good side is bioeconomy. If we are upgrading all of these agro-industrial side streams and the waste and so on, we can produce feed which can substitute for the land we now use for producing feed. It's 72% of all arable land on this globe, which is being taken by animal feed production. So we have to do two things: cut down our meat consumption, it's a necessity, and the other half is to make feed of something, the extras, which doesn't require more land. And that could leave more land for the biodiversity. It's extremely important. The other part, I would say, the NGOs. I have a lot of, from my time at Novo, I was part of working with the NGOs when making not just financial reporting, annual report, but also environmental and social, and in a lot of interaction with NGOs. And I'm also in the WWF Scientific Committee. And it's also a mutual interest to see that we are actually, they can learn something from the scientists. For instance, that it's not good enough just to say, oh, it has to be certified soy to come from South America. No, it's not enough. We should develop our own local resources instead of importing so much. And we can include them, and they are not. They are criticizing, most NGOs are criticizing the fuel, not the bioeconomy. Don't get it wrong. It is the fuel which is being criticized. Industrial biotech and enzyme has been accepted by Greenpeace for decades now. I was part of that process where they can see it in better use of the resources, more benign, environmental benign processes and so on. We have to take them into the dialogue, and it's very, very positive.
Thank you. Dennis.
And I think the greatest opportunities that bioeconomy can bring us is this regional to local level economies. So where the small and medium-sized enterprises work closely together with each other, industrial symbiosis, you use your resources, locally produce, regionally produce resources, and then hopefully the consumption, the whole embedded economies are there. So I think there's a great potential there. The bioeconomy can actually help us to shift from today heavily oil-based global big capitalist economic system to such beautiful small-scale distributed economies. I think on that end I fully agree with you, but whether it's possible or how easily we can achieve to such economic systems is another discussion. We need another conference for that maybe. But I fully agree with you when it comes to the production of the biomass. So what we say is clearly sustainable production of without destroying your soils, without destroying your soil fertility. Of course, there are so much opportunities before we intensify our production, using all the side streams, all the byproducts, all the waste that we generate, eat less meat, and then there's enough biomass there that we can use for other purposes, in addition to what you just already mentioned.
Thank you. Question from Katarina in the audience. Here you go.
Okay, or rather a comment. I think when you talk about bioeconomy, that we live in a global world, even though we like to think that everything is better when we have local or regional production of things, but we still live in a world where we have trades across. I mean, Sweden would not live without any trade, international trade, but then our companies would go bankrupt because everything would be too expensive. So I think in the bioeconomy, we just have to accept we live in a global world, and then, you know, with your political views of life, you can have that in either direction. But I think as a scientist, I think it's really clear that we need to look at societal challenges in a way of how, you know, different scenarios of how the world can become in international trade and so on and global, because I mean, currently the biomass production is overflowing by things from South America. So, and that is something we live with already. And we have regulations in the EU and how to use that, both from biofuels and for the biomass projection. So maybe last, this is invoking a thing. Do you think, how much do you think we should also include the policy part in when we work with the bioeconomy value chain, and not just look into what part of the chain is better than the other one?
Thank you. Who would like to respond to that? Camilla?
I didn't grip your question. I'm sorry.
I didn't understand.
Could you repeat, please?
Repeat the question again, Luli Katarina, please. It's
thank
easier
you,
if you do
thank
it
you.
yourself. Here we go.
Yeah, I said when you look at, policies can be either local, regional, or European or global. And when we work with policies I should have been more specific, sorry. So when we work on our global and national policies that are also joined to the EU, because we're not regulating everything ourselves, how should we deal with the bioeconomy, both on the production side and the value chain? We tend to think on our different small parts of the some develop enterprises, some want to develop enzymes, some want to develop agricultural products. But how can we do this to on all scales at the same time?
Dennis is
Of course, we need to
eager.
interlink all these independently addressed policies, because it clearly doesn't work. We have seen with the biofuel case in the past 10 years. I mean, there are so much issues to look at. The waste, the energy, the food, they're all interlinked to each other if we talk about bioeconomy. So if we let all other politicians talk about their own bit without really communicating with each other, then we end up in problems. That's why we say that it's such a complex system. That's why we say that we need cross-sectoral collaboration. I think this includes the policy side as well. It's not only the production or processing, but on the regulatory, on the governance of the bioeconomy.
Comments, Camilla?
Yes, I agree to what Dennis says, of course. And I think it's very good of you, Katarina, as well, to take up the global point of view of this issue, because we live in a global world, and we will continue doing so. And this is the prerequisite for what we have in front of us.
You wanted to add something, Pekka?
Yes, I could comment. Of course, the question is important and difficult at the same time, but there are some tools and databases. For example, if you consider the work of UNEP's research panel, and the different type of modeling approaches like multi-regional input-output models, where you can basically trace that, let's say, the consumers in Sweden, what they consume and the production that is needed to feed into consumers' need in Sweden, what that actually costs, and in which countries and what sectors that cost. It's very, very tricky questions that easily you cannot necessarily see the full value chain behind the global trade patterns that what actually exist. So the outcome can be quite surprising. And of course that kind of a big framework work is needed, and the research panel, like I mentioned, is one of the key players in this field.
Thank you. We had sort of a big pitfall, I guess you can call that, with the ethanol development in terms of bioeconomy a few years back. What could we learn from that? How that sort of made things a bit complicated? Lena?
I think the first learning lesson is that we have to be in contact with the real world. So we cannot just continue when oil prices drop so much. Then it's kind of artificial and not real in contact with reality, that it was just continued that it could be ethanol will be totally viable economically with dropping down to 40 instead of $120 per barrel. Huh? So that's one part. The other is the technological part. There was this move forward with electrical cars is a learning lesson, immediately learning loop back to ethanol. Okay. We most likely will not need bioethanol for private cars, but it's still very important for the big trucks, for the airplanes, and for the big ships. That's where we need the biofuel. So let us focus our research for biofuel for the heavy transport. And there it is, the question from Kees was, how can it go together? Electrical cars for private cars, and the big heavy transport. They still need batteries, too heavy, huh? so you cannot fly with them. Yeah.
Not
So, so I think we have to be more. I mean, not just continue, but really be in touch with reality in your how you are developing your.
Anna-Maria.
But just also to say that we need to let a lot of flowers flourish. I mean, we can't just put all the eggs into one basket, a lot of different pictures, but just to say we can't believe in single silver bullets, because there needs to be a multitude. We need to have a lot of different options. And as companies, we definitely need it. And especially if we want to roll it out in different markets where the conditions, where the local conditions are different, we need to have a multitude of choices. So I really think that we need to learn, all of us, not to point to. I mean, we should be a bit more humble in pointing to what is the solution, because there are many.
Dennis.
I think this is very common when it comes to how our brain works. We always like quick fixes, quick solutions, not really looking at the root cause of a problem, how we can solve it quickly and in a cheaper way. And I'm not an expert in biofuel, ethanol, but technology played a huge role there. I mean, in the early days, I think we use more energy to produce the bioethanol than what we actually get from that. From that, we came all the now much more efficient ways. But I think that's way of thinking, like how can we solve a part of a bigger problem, but at the same time creating other problems. So we need to have this holistic view, what we really want. And in that sense, I'm not sure if I agree with you when it comes to providing the biofuel for the aviation industry. So maybe yes, to a certain extent, but not definitely. I've heard from different meetings that we can use all forest residues to provide the biofuel for aviation industry.
Did I ever say that?
No, you didn't say that, but I heard
Sorry.
some people that said that.
Pekka, can we fly on wood chips?
Yeah, well, or by electricity, it would be exciting too when I take my flight back and I have an electricity cable behind my airplane.
Okay.
Whether that would be long enough or no. But then on the other hand, I would perhaps point out that at the phase when new products are designed, in the designing phase, I would also emphasize some sort of systematic screening of the impacts of the energy balance, life cycle assessment related issue, holistic view that you don't outsource the emissions to some other sector, for example, which is quite often is the case. And also perhaps like I pointed out in my presentation, some sort of systematic market foresight studies that what actually might happen, what might work. And especially in the field of bioeconomy, as we've heard today, that we have so many possibilities, so many new product categories that we can do. So what would make sense, some sort of guesstimates at least in that field, that would be important.
Camilla?
Yes, a comment on what you said, let all the flowers flower. Yes, and yes, I think the same, but at the same time, to make things difficult, I also think that we have to focus, because I'm afraid, yes, we have to let the flowers flower, and we have to make mistakes. That must be possible, and we have to do that. But if we don't focus on some things, I'm afraid that there will be no shift in the end.
But then maybe, like you, sorry.
It has to be visible that we are going in a
And you're thinking in reference to, for instance, for the car industry to be able to sort of focus on what technology to invest in.
Yeah.
But then rather to focus on which fuel you could look at the result, like end results, rather than exactly defining the technology to achieve that. Because then you promote innovation, but you do give a clear indication of this is where we need to be in a certain amount of time.
More an open solution. Yes.
I think we definitely, you're right, we have to find out that you say, okay, now we need to set a goal for that, but you are right, not in technologies, but we need to have renewable solution for that, and market forces will then see who is winning, That's very important. For the fuel part, I have to add to what you said, that what I didn't say we should make bioethanol or anything like it for airplanes or for heavy. There are the bio oil, which can be, for instance, a hydrothermal treatment of very wet, dirty biomass, organic, can be made into bunker oil. You can make from methane, the biogas. You can make methanol, which could be used as energy for other types. So it's not to take all the forest out. It is scrap waste. What I'm talking about.
Scrap.
Yeah, you grow algae and produce an oil and grow it on using the surplus of polluting materials and then the sun for the rest of it. So don't let us caught. Yeah, and let us not kind of start discussing saying that, oh, my technology is better than yours. It is which direction and what we want to achieve, that and to solve the problems we want to solve in a sustainable manner. And then let us all start. I mean, then that's all flowers to make us go there. That's the idea.
Thank you. I think I will let that be the final note, because we've ended our 45 minutes of panel discussion. Let all the flowers flower, but do have some direction. Exactly, Camilla. We can just not all just be too open. We need to be a little bit specific. And we need the industry, we need the policymakers, and we need the researchers. So we're very happy for Dennis' initiative with the development in the university here, the global program.
Very good.
All right.
Thank you.
There are lots of more stuff going on during this week at the university, celebrating the 350 years anniversary. Tonight there will be a grand opening in this facility. Invitation, you have to be signed up, but there are still some openings, I hope. If you change your mind and haven't signed up, I will be here again at 6 o'clock. And a warm applause to all of you joining us here on stage and sharing your insights.